Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Christ consciousness, otherwise known as Gnosis. Well, in my research, my continuing research on Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, the founder of the Temple of Set, I've ran into some information on Anton LaVey. And of course, these two were connected directly. And I don't know how much interest any of this is to you. This is an area that I specialize in and kind of have been doing research on, particularly the Temple of Set and satanic groups in general. So I run into these things, and of course I'm going to be putting an awful lot of practical lectures and videos up very soon. And the actual videos and so forth will be available to Patreon members. Audios will be available to YouTube users that will go into these practical information. Now, and these practical information will be on the use of radionic tools and practical techniques in general. This is course information. This is something that people need to support if you expect to have this information coming continually. We offer courses and everything else at our website, and people should check that out. Go to the upper right and you'll see a little logo or the name that says Radionic Tech. Click on there and you go to our website to order courses and other things. What we try and do in this media, since we get absolutely nothing from the jokey social medias that want you to work 50 hours a week for less money than a slave would work for, these things are all transferring by everybody over to other mediums. And of course, this is a great way for the huge increase in profits that all social media has had by literally billions of dollars by paying their people nothing. And that goes for all of them, not only just this channel. So if you want this kind of information, it's switching over there. I've been doing this slowly this year, and it will become more intense as time goes on, as lots of good information cannot even be offered anymore because we live in a dictatorship run by corporate mega giants who just fill their pockets with cash at the expense of everybody else. What's new? So the whole idea is that's what's happening. So let's get back into this. I'm going to call this is the dark side of Anton LaVey. Now, I bring this up because of the fact that even though I've had a lot of contact and done a fair amount of research, read the Satanic Bible, read the book on the Church of Satan by Aquino, who wrote 2 volumes on his activity with and his contact with the Church of Satan, which he was the highest ranking member of, just under Anton LaVey, or at least the certified. From what I understand, Anton LaVey was not that crazy about Aquino. They weren't really best of friends in any way. He was stuck with writing the newsletter, which nobody wants. And of course, he's a badge getter, Michael Aquino. He went to the highest rank of Eagle Scouts. He went into the military. He wants all these pins and badges. That's what he's into. He wants that kind of recognition and any kind of goofball certificate he can get from any goofball organization, no matter a lack of the credibility. I mean, he was proud of getting a fake certificate for a H.P. Lovecraft from the Mississauga, or whatever that university is. He's a part of the Dagon order. Woo, the mythical order by the anti-occultist H.P. Lovecraft, who wrote an entire book with of how what a joke occultism was, etc. With Houdini. Houdini sponsored it, he wrote it, and it wasn't published because Houdini died soon after this. So, as we understand all that, so I ran into some information which I never heard about him and so forth. But first of all, it appears that he is from Jewish heritage, even though it cannot be fully printed. So, but his name is not LaVey, it's LaVey. So, I should say, I always like to say LaVey. LeVay, his name is LeVay. He was born Howard Stanton LeVay. Apparently, that is a Jewish name, even though there is no statement of fact. His father, his mother was from the Ukraine, and where was his father again from? Let me check that out quickly. His father was born in Georgia, part of the Eastern European countries. Georgia is was under the Soviet Union, now is an independent country. But that's a Eastern European country. I don't know, does it border Russia, but it's somewhere around there. That's where his father is from. His mother's from the Ukraine. Both immigrated to Ohio in 1893 and became naturalized American citizens in 1900s. He was involved in, and he was a person involved or interested in music and learning a lot of musical instruments, which his parents encouraged. They allowed him to learn all these things. He went to Mill Valley, California, high school there, until the age of 16, where he claimed he'd left the high school. So he's not even a high school graduate, to join the circus. And back then, high school was important. And later carnivals, first as a roustabout and cage boy in acts with the Big Cats, which he eventually owned his own, was it a tiger? So he used to play music in the carnival tents and these things and the usual things. And of course, this is a pretty... people who go to the circus don't understand what's really going on. These are a band of very strange people that travel the country. They're known to be of kind of the lowest moral types, from prostitutes to criminals, trying to evade the law, etc. And they're just a bunch of kind of odd people. So we are told that is the stereotypical understanding of the circus. I don't know if that's still the case now or not. He did go to a lot of the very adult Saturday night shows there and maybe participated in or staged them at the circus. And, a lot of the very sexual, strange things were done in circuses. Again, this was in the 40s and 50s when there was no other things out there. There wasn't strip clubs. There wasn't the same amount of prostitution and porno and everything else. So a lot of this stuff filtered into these kind of strange people who weren't prosecuted because they were gone in a few days and nobody cared. They would have these kind of bawdy type shows, maybe burlesque, maybe more than that. And he noticed that a lot of the people that went to those shows also went to the Sunday morning church meetings. And this has been stated that further amplified his dislike of the Christian religion because of the fact that he saw the hypocrites there. Now, this has been speculated. There is one journalist, Lawrence Wright, who investigated LaVey's background, or LEVAY's background. That's his real name. And as a few people understand that, the term Satanist and Satanic are interchangeable. It's like Caribbean and Caribbean to those ignorant, buffoonish journalists out there that don't quite understand that. Also, that his actual name is LEVAY, and he changed it to LaVey to take away from the actual Jewish connotation of that name. Because he didn't want to be branded that. But apparently, he certainly is into that background, even though he was never a practicing Jew, or stated that, or his family. But, that could have been left out as well. You got to remember that LaVey is manufacturing an image here. This image is he put together. He was a showman. And some people say that he, as I've mentioned here, this one journalist claims that I don't know how you would track a guy in the circus from the 40s. He certainly had that interest. He got himself a lion or tiger that he kept at his house for many years. I don't think that's something he just decided to go and do. I think probably he learned that at the circus and so many other things. He also was great con man and entertainer. And where did he learn that from? He certainly didn't learn that from high school in California. So the whole idea is that this is another thing that is kind of ridiculous when you get into all of it, that this would be a way of he would actually just fall into this. he has a very interesting, contrived background. And like most people and most everything, I mean, I think they found that on almost everybody's resume. That they found that about 80% of the information is lies. And that's the average person. So don't get fooled by the fact that this doesn't happen otherwhere. Now, this is a guy who's deliberately contrived his life to be this mysterious type person. So let's understand everything is contrived. You don't know what's real or not real. You can't get any good sources. Reporters report what backs up their personal belief system. So they go out and look for people and to talk to and information that will verify what they know already instead of seeking truth. There are very few people seeking truth out there. I'm one of them, and there's virtually a handful of others out there. Everybody, no matter how they preach and state they are so great, the bottom line is that they are not, and most of them are controlled by others and even paid by them, or they're delusional, and people feed them misinformation that they report as facts because that's what they want to hear. So Anton Szandor LeVay is what he renamed himself. His original name was Howard Stanton LeVey. So we need to understand that in terms of where he's coming from. He's written apparently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books, which isn't much when you get to the bigger things all. And he released 3 albums, which a lot of people don't know. That he released several albums. He was a musician, and this was a great interest of his. So there are 3 albums he released. I've heard some of these, and they are kind of interesting, but, you know, they're kind of spooky Halloween stuff, most of it. I haven't listened to all of his stuff. He had some minor on-screen roles in The Devil's Reign in 1975. He was a narrator for the Mondo film Death Scenes. He didn't do too well in Hollywood. He was an advisor, I think, on Rosemary's Baby. I don't know if he's credited with that or not. He also, I think, has a few cameos in there. But he wasn't really banging up the Hollywood scene, nor were they paying him much, which is so traditionally Hollywood, is to screw everybody. While they, and they always tell you, and I've had this happen to myself personally again, is the fact that, we don't have a lot of money. Well, how did you get that roles? Well, how come you live in the Hollywood Hills in a $5 million house? Well, we don't have any money on this project that you're involved in. That's Hollywood, baby. So write it down and know it. But that's typical of rich people. They'll never give you any money whatsoever or pay you fairly. They will use their pressure of being rich and their connections to screw you over. That's the way the world is. So, but there are several things that came out in this interesting little article I ran into, and we don't know how true any of this is to begin with. But I'm going to go over these allegations because it really wasn't talked about by Aquino, which of course wouldn't bring these things up. What he brought up were things that were kind of nasty, but not really anything that would hurt him. Aquino, which, as I said, if you're really interested in the Church of Satan, get his books which lay out things in his own prejudiced manner. But LaVey was dirty, filthy, abusive to the animals, and in general, of course, turned out to be nothing more than a whore after preaching that Aquino heard. Aquino heard. It's not what's preached. It's not what something means. It's what you understand it to mean between your 2 ears. It's like people who don't understand what is the meaning of that word now and today. And this is something people, well, it means this. I don't care what it means in ancient Greek. Pentagram is a Greek word meaning 5 points. Is that what pentagram means to you? Well, when you think of pentagram, you're not thinking of 5 points. So that meaning is worthless. What does a pentagram mean in modern times? And I did a whole little lecture on that. He claims to have been playing in Los Angeles burlesque houses, and he allegedly had a brief affair with the then unknown Marilyn Monroe. Again, this is a great story. Now, Marilyn was known to part it for anybody, and that's how she kind of got ahead in Hollywood, and that's... I don't know if that's positive or negative. So she certainly spread it around for everybody and seemed to have slept with just about everybody. Would she sleep with this unknown burlesque piano player? I don't know. Maybe that was a way that she thought she could get somewhere. Who knows? But there's no way. But most people, including her manager, state that this is bogus. Again, it's a nice story. You can claim having any kind of contact with dead people you want to. You can't defame the dead, I think, legally. Secondly, who's going to fight it? So the whole idea is that the bottom line is that you can always do that. Oh, yeah, I knew that person. And of course, they're dead now, and they can't verify it or not. They can't sue you. They can't do anything else. There are no lawyers in coffins, even though a lot of people would like them to be in there. But the whole idea is that, this is the problem. He married in 1950 his first wife, which was Carol Lansing. When Lansing was 50, they married the following year. He met her in 1950 when Lansing was 15 years old. Lansing gave birth to LaVey's first daughter, Carla LaVey, born in 1952. In order to avoid the Korean draft, he studied criminology at City College of San Francisco. I mean, that's what they're saying, the reason he did it. Probably a lot of people went to college to avoid the draft, particularly in Vietnam. LaVey then attended a job as a photographer for the San Francisco Police Department, where he worked for 3 years. He dubbed, they're missing a word there, he dubbed as a psychic investigator, looking into 800 calls referred to him by the police department. Later, biographers questioned whether LaVey ever worked for the police department, and there are no records sustaining his claim. So again, it's hard to find records to do all this stuff. The fact that he made up this entire story here is quite possible. On the other hand, how do you get information like this? And who's going to bother if you go to the San Francisco police department, you talk to them, say, I'm trying to verify if Anton LaVey worked for you. Do they care? Are they going to take their time? And you're dealing with a notoriously corrupt and bad organization when you deal with any police. They don't want to be bothered giving you anything. They want to contrive their stories to increase their fake records to make them look good. So I'm not sure how you verify this. So it's quite possible he could have done any of this stuff as well. But I'm sure there's a slant on it. Maybe he delivered coffee to the police department and he made that into a different job. So the whole idea is that after he was married for 10 years to Carol, he divorced her and entered, and then a Diane Hegarty. And this is who he was. Well, he wasn't married to her either. And this is another thing I didn't know. And so there's a lot of little things I didn't know about him, and I think a lot of people don't. So he was never married to her. However, she was his companion for 25 years, and 24 years, and mothered his second daughter, Zena, who married Sheck. So at the end of their relationship, Hegarty sued for palimony. Now, palimony has never been granted to anybody as far as I understand, but apparently when they did break up, she claimed a partnership, and there's a whole line of bad business practices here as well. He was supposed to be a corporation and a nonprofit. Apparently that was not the case. In California, there's a whole stream, and I'm not going to go into that. It's kind of complicated and boring. But the court ruled that this was a partnership, not a corporation, and the fact that he awarded her 50% of the assets, as is normal in California anyway. It was not palimony, because, as I said, palimony has been tried for many years, but has never been upheld by the court. So we do need to understand that. So when she went to court, she was able to swing it in her direction, because she should have got nothing. Because if you're not married, you have no rights whatsoever. That's very important. There is so-called a civil, I've heard of this civil marriage, things that happen over if you're married a certain period of time, you're considered married. I don't know what the law there is not, but generally that is something that doesn't work either. So you don't own your assets. As soon as you get married, in community property states, which is one of them is California, 50% of what you own goes to your partner, which is relatively fair depending on what the situation is. You can judge for yourself of depending upon the influence of the other partner. Generally, certainly if somebody's been married for a long period of time, they certainly should get 50% of the assets. It seems to be only fair. So that's what happened. That's what killed the church, because he lost a huge amount of his assets, even though apparently he held on to all of his copyrights and name of the church and etc. But the church by then was dead anyway. People want to say that's the reason why the church died. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't making any money. People, I believe it was $13. You got a lifetime membership in the church, is what it stood for many years. I don't know if that went on to the very end or not, but that's going to get you nothing. After you get your initial surge, because everybody wants one of these funny little cards, $13 for a lifetime membership does absolutely nothing for you. So as an organization, it is worthless, except for petty cash that you bring in because of that. So that it's important to understand that as well, and that's why they ran into financial problems. That's why he monetized the church, which was basically didn't believe in anything. They did not worship Satan. They did not pray to him or do anything else. This was considered they were all atheists. They believed in nothing, and this was just kind of connecting to your primal understanding, your lower self, which there is some value to that. I mean, we as much as we want to think we're higher beings, we have constant cravings for food and sex and ego empowerment, and we are lower beings. And that's what religion is supposed to bring out. They're supposed to bring out your higher self, moving you away from your lower self, which are your basic animal instincts. But man doesn't have animal instincts, which seem to be fairly basic and balanced. Mankind twists everything into an evil reality. It's not basic instincts. It's not the fact that you're on the hunt for sexuality all the time or the hunt for food. It's the fact that you pervert all that. That's what human beings do. So, I mean, it's important to understand that. Now, it's very easy just to say, yeah, I'm just going to go to my base instincts, and that feels good. That's like saying, all I'm going to eat all day is chocolate cake. So the whole idea is, yeah, it's good for a couple of days until you, or even a couple of months until you're 400 pounds, you're sick, and you die. Well, that's your base instinct, though. I'm going to live off of candy bars and cake and drink whiskey all day. Well, you're not going to get far doing that. So religions come in and say, well, there's better paths. And that's not a hard path to do. It's not a hard path to do all day is to want to fornicate, eat crap all day. And that's not a very high level. So religion comes in and says, well, there's higher paths. Why don't you learn to control these things and grow into a better human being? Unfortunately, churches grew into the same controlled, contrived evil that just going to the baser instincts have done. So basically, religion is a base instinct that should be avoided, while spiritualism should be embraced as a higher path and discipline. It's discipline. Don't eat cake all day. Eat some good stuff. God forbid, eat your vegetables. So I don't want to go into too many more details here. So he then married that person who they've been with together for long periods of time. They separated. Now, I didn't know why they separated. I had no idea. Well, I'm going to go into all the dirt on Anton LeVay right now. We're going to talk about all this. So there's a lot of other information. I'm not sure I want to go into all that. The rest of it is kind of boring, what he was into, not into. But let's go into some of these things that people don't know about. And, of course, everything that he's done has, and anything he's stated comes into question per the media, and particularly Seweropedia, who has a big thing on him, which is steeped in questions saying this didn't happen, that didn't happen, etc. All that went in. We just don't know what is true or not, but he was a great showman. He probably was involved with the circus and other things. If not, he contrived a great story that came to be very interesting. Certainly he could have to do that, but he became, basically, his life was starting out as a musician, playing in different places. I don't know how he came into the Satanism, but I think that was just something he tried and it caught on. It was at a good time. Drugs and sex were at their height. This was a time everybody was revolting in 1966 when he started the church, and apparently was able to get lots of followers, particularly being in San Francisco, where a lot of the very radical people were at that particular time. This is the Haight-Ashbury, the Berkeley area, where people are all very alternative and pretty radically alternative. I mean, Berkeley was known to be filled with very radical thinkers. No matter where they came from, they ended up apparently at Berkeley. And as I mentioned, he painted his house entirely black. Now, his house came from his parents who gave it to him. That certainly is a nice, once they died, he got it willed, and it's nice to have a house in a very expensive area of the world that you don't have to pay anything on. That means you have a huge income that is provided for you. I should say lack of expenses, which is kind of like having an income, because living in San Francisco has always been expensive. So that's another little up he got. And he painted the house completely black too, with all the white houses around him, which is traditional in San Francisco. Pretty much everything's white there. So he stood out. I guess he got away with it. I don't know if you could do that today, because that probably would go against neighborhood guidelines. But as he said, they mostly believed in nothing. Now, this is the article I'm getting information from here, which has, again, as usual, you got to know the situation, has correct and incorrect information like everything you read, and they can't be verified either. But the point is that it states here that, of course, all his meetings were at his, called the Black House there. With his marriage there that ended to Diane, she sued him for palimony, and he lost ownership of the Black House. Now, I don't know how that is or not. He did stay in. Somebody bought the house for him, for what I understand, or maybe bought Diane's ownership, which would be 50% of that house, back and gave it to him. He lived there to the day he died, from what I understand. Somebody did that. I'm not sure how that, I read that somewhere else. I mentioned the palimony. Nobody's ever gotten palimony anywhere in the United States that I'm aware of. Many people, there was a famous palimony suit. That was the person who brought that lost, and there's never been enforced after that as far as I am aware of. And, of course, there's been lots of crimes connected to satanic individuals. A recent one was someone who was watching and researching the Living God website, the other satanic group by E.A. Conetting, who killed 2 girls in the park because he thought Satan would give him a lottery win. There's another example. In 2008, 7 young members of one of the satanic cults in Russia killed 3 teenage girls by stabbing them to death 666 times, 666. They then cooked their hearts and tongues and ate them. What a charming group. So, they stated that I've been researching the Church of Satan on the internet, and that's how they learned how to perform a satanic ritual. Now, let's remember here that this is not condoned by any organization. These are a bunch of maniacs. 7 got together here in Russia and murdered 3 teenage girls. So the whole idea is that, and of course we can link a lot of crimes to Christian, Jewish, Muslim, etc. So, it's always sexy when you add Satan to it. But the point is, people are murdering people in the name of religion all the time. So we can't get carried away. But certainly, Satanists have to be understanding that their preaching is not exactly building the best people either. And of course, none of this is ever condoned, but there is some bizarre stuff in all literature, just like Crowley and other people who talk about ceremonies using male children, and even the Satanic Bible, which he probably copied that from Crowley, talks about the highest offering, which is human flesh. So we got to understand that. This article tries to link Manson to that, but it's not true at all. Manson was not a Satanist whatsoever, and while he may have ran into these people on the street because they were popular, just like the Process Church, he was never involved with anybody. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a lecture on Manson, and you know, Manson never killed anybody. Few people know that, and basically Manson was kind of a nice guy and didn't do anything. He was a pimp and a con man. He was not a horrible murderer. So this is other things you don't understand, but this is all part of this huge different information campaign. One of the things I wanted to get into here that's not known, and I don't know if it's verified, I don't remember any of this coming out in Michael Aquino's book on him whatsoever on the Church of Satan. I don't remember this. I think I would have if it was in there. So he jumped over things and talked about LaVey as kind of a con man, hustler, and a sellout, and a dirty kind of guy who abused animals, but he didn't really talk about anything else. It's also that LaVey's grandson was involved in some sort of sexual assault case. And what's interesting is that this article here, did I mention where this was coming from? The Clever 15 Scariest Church of Satan Photos Ever. The Clever. You may want to look at this, because what's interesting here, and I will reproduce this, is the fact that there's a picture here of Joe Rogan with Anton LaVey's grandson giving the devil sign with his arm around him. What's going on there, Joe? Is that a joke? Should we laugh at this? I'm not sure. And, of course, Anton LaVey's grandson, who is trying to milk all he can from the Church of Satan and what his grandfather did, which he had little or no contact with, from what I can tell, or at least he was too young before he died. But it's interesting that in 2011, Anton LaVey's grandson, Stanton LaVey, was arrested for sexually assaulting a teenager. He and his girlfriend, Michelle Nicely, is that real? Lured a 19-year-old into their home where they slipped her some drugs and then forced her to watch pornography while they sexually humiliated her. His landlord neighbors at the same time stated that he didn't surprise them too much because he seemed like that kind of guy. Well, of course, that's personal opinion of neighbors who I'm sure didn't like him to pin him. So the whole idea is this was a 19-year-old, a legal adult, and I'm not sure what went on here. You can't give people drugs and then have sex with them. That's because they don't have any consent. So I don't know what the case was there or not, but people like to be lured. We have to be careful here of getting these things. So obviously, somebody was given drugs and partied and then regretted it. That's usually what happens. So we have to be very careful of all these things and understand what's going on there. Needless to say, it's not good on anybody's part doing that. So somebody felt used, so you were doing something wrong. So moving other than, and this is what was interesting, and I'm not sure this was true, of course, you know, they had these wild sex parties, and it's interesting, Aquino, who claims that he's virtually, who has stated he's a sexual prude, and didn't get involved. And here's the final kicker of it all. And as I said, I don't remember, and it's been a long time, I'm going to reread the Michael Aquino's books on the Church of Satan, but it's very interesting that his second wife, Diane Hegarty, spent 25 years with Anton LaVey. She, once he divorced his first wife, he got involved with her, and they were together for 25 years until they had their breakup. They were never officially married. They had a daughter, Xena, together. She was a high priestess of the Church of Satan. She was involved in the majority of the rituals, but things weren't as perfect as they seemed. So she was the main woman they were using who brought everybody in. So how much was going on in terms of gangbangs and sexual orgies, we don't know if they were. I always wonder, because you really don't seem to find this. The 60s are a little bit different. But the bottom line is you don't really find people that are going to come to there unless you're going to pay a prostitute and work in a sexual situation. Although there are, and of course, with a little bit of drugs in San Francisco, that possibly could have been. We don't know the intricacies of that, and I don't know if anybody's ever talked about that. Reportedly, she was physically abused by Anton, and she had been hospitalized several times as a result of that. Well, that's news. So, she's claiming physical abuse, and there must be, if it is real, there must be physical records in hospitals that state that she went there and was beat up. Now, back in those days, depending on what time, date that was, there wasn't the same kind of laws they have today. And this is the reason why they have laws like this today, because a lot of women were abused. You didn't have to report it. You went to the hospital, etc. If this was today, this would go right to the police, and they would have problems because this is marital or partner or whatever you want to call it, abuse physically, where someone was beaten up to the point that they had to go to the hospital. So it shows you the type of person that Anton LaVey may have been. Again, is this substantiated? Is this real? Do we know what's going on here? Can we prove any of this? Well, we don't know. He's another easy fall guy. He's the red herring again. But certainly, they did get divorced. Why did they get divorced? I'd like to know that. Well, this could be a prime reason for it, especially after 25 years. People get fed up after that, and they decide to go their own way. And she figured out, well, how much money can I get from this? We'll sue him in court, and that it's worth it to her at that particular period of time. But if someone's being physically abused, and it says here on, what's the term? Several times, that she had been hospitalized several times as a result of that, of his physical abuse. Well, that states a lot. That's also as and Xena herself has, of course, which happens with a lot of things, married Shrek or Zappa, whatever his name is. She's now a Buddha tantric teacher, apparently, and psychic consultant in Berlin. And I believe she recently divorced Shrek, but I'm not sure. They were living together. They may still be together. And of course, she has stopped any contact with or a member of any satanic organization or anything to go with that. So I don't know what all that means. People change when you, as you go on in life, and like so many people, because it's a easy thing to go into, is that you become a Buddhist and you start offering those kind of services. There's some insinuation that she's a tantric Buddhist practitioner or teacher, which may involve some sort of sexual practices. I don't know. That's complete speculation on my part. But you can call her up on the phone. You can make an appointment to get a psychic reading. And theoretically, if you wanted to, I guess you could pay to ask her questions. I don't know if she's going to be open to it or not. But that's what she's involved with now. Having a child at that particular age is very, very suspicious and also very terrible because it's unlikely that a 13-year-old would wanting to willingly do this. Well, we don't know. The bottom line is people have in their own minds she could have deliberately wanted to get pregnant. And in this day and age, it has been for the last 10 to 20 years, most people are sexually active in about 12 to 13. In my generation, it was anywhere from 16 to 18, but now it is fallen down to about 12. So 12-year-olds are engaging in sexual contact, which is not surprising considering there is sex everywhere. I mean, you can see anything you want online for free, and nothing stops you from accessing these sites. They don't even ask for proof of age or anything else. So this is very interesting. So it's not surprising that this sexuality awareness is getting down to such a low level, and there's so much sexual abuse, etc. It's just everywhere, and it's playing into the lowest common denominator of everyone. And of course, it's something that is going to compel you to do things. But it's very interesting that he may have been involved in. And again, I don't know how much of this can be checked out. That he was an abuser. Someone has to go to the hospital on multiple occasions. Something is very wrong. So these things usually don't happen once. If it happens once, people do it again. So we just don't know the true facts. As with everything in life is kind of, that's interesting. Next to that interesting is a question mark, because there's no way to prove it. Is this person's opinion? Did the information that he got from someone who was trying to put down and discredit Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan? Because after all, they're Satanists. This happens with Michael Aquino, where there's virtually nothing to track him to anything done wrong. Absolutely nothing. There's only been one case that someone has come up against him, done by a reverend, at the Presidio, one incident where he was charged with something and the charges were dropped by a guy who wanted $3 million from the testimony of a 2 to 3-year-old. So all of this is very dubious at best, and they never seem to get to a point where anybody is seriously convicted of anything. Charges, being arrested, all this stuff is very, very interesting, but proves absolutely nothing. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of people that are arrested every year in the United States. Probably 99% of them are innocent, so it doesn't mean anything. But what is this? I mean, this brings further question of what was going on there. He created something that has no value, that hasn't really lasted. It's never been followed by much. It was kind of one of those things out of the 60s of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and he fell right into that. Now, these things do continue to this day, and more hardcore, more serious organizations are out there, and God knows really what they're up to, what is going on there. But this goes with everybody. If we expect organizations to be pure, yet the government is 100% corrupt, the military is 100% corrupt, the police departments are 100% corrupt, state and federal, do we really expect the people in this planet or in this country or in this world in general, do we really expect them not to be involved in stuff like that? I think it's very naive. Horrible things happen to millions of people, and usually they're sanctioned by a governmental industry, like the murder of millions of Muslims in the Middle East since we've been over there fighting battles for oil companies, based on a fake premise that somebody had weapons of mass destruction when they didn't, and we didn't know if they used them anyway. So the whole idea is we have to be very careful. We have countries that have weapons of mass destruction that are not supporters of, quote, freedom or the United States. One of them is India, who's in Russia's pocket and buys most of their weapons from Russia. Well, what's going on there? Maybe we should invade India. They have nuclear weapons and could be a danger at any time. So, if we take this kind of aspect, it's interesting that a superpower only assaults people who are pushovers, little tyrants and gangs, which are easily taken out, because really all they have is a bunch of guys on the ground with guns, and that is not a defendable position against superior force, meaning biggie weapons. So we have to understand where all this is coming from and the perspective of how you look at things. But it's interesting, and certainly the birth that Xena had is irrefutable. She had a child. It was at 13. Well, there's no way of arguing that. Now, who impregnated her? And we just don't know if they're having orgies, and apparently that's what's part of it. Did she have multiple sex partners? She probably was quite a catch in that house, being only 13, as the sick mind of so many people are looking for young people, for whatever that means. But that certainly is a really problematical situation that is irrefutable. Now, who the father is, unless she's going to admit it herself, and apparently doesn't want to, and I'm not sure why she doesn't want to admit who the father is now that she's estranged from the organization. And I'm not sure that that would have any effect on her whatsoever, except gain her more sympathy. But certainly that is what we're talking about in this case. So did all this go on? There must be legal records at a hospital that his partner, his live-in girlfriend, wifey, whatever you want to call it, plain and simple, went to the hospital. So these are things about the darker side, the trash on the Church of Satan. If it's not all trash, it's an infantile belief system, as all left-hand paths are. It's based in ego and primitiveness and excess, and shows a complete lack of discipline. And the fact that you can't keep to a diet, you want to make being fat popular. And that's what they're doing here. So, yeah, I'm going to get it to be 800 pounds because I can stuff more food in my mouth, and I'm better than you. You're a hypocrite. You eat good. So this is the kind of mentality, and since I have no discipline and I have nothing else, well, this is what's good. What you're living is a false world, because everybody should eat 4 pounds of cake a day. So this is the kind of mentality that you get with all these left-hand pathers. It's an infantile belief system, empowering God forms and systems that are notoriously tricksters and don't want to help you. But they're the good guys. Of course, these people have to twist everything. Hypocrisy, lies, deceit, and corruption that are perpetrated by all institutions and every single religion should not be tolerated. Those people should be flushed away. And the proper purpose and the higher ideals that these organizations, religions represented at one time should be restored. To throw out good with the bad is imbecilic and childish. Until next one.